Welcome back to Film the World podcast. I'm your host, William Patrick Moore. I'm just going to give you my real name from now on. I've had some unbelievable happenings in the last 24 hours, so I need to get out here and really speak what's been going on with me. So I'm sure, like many of you, you've kind of, are experiencing what people consider ascension symptoms, right? Like maybe like knee aches and all of these other strange things. And I'll just say straight up, they're pretty legit, you know what I mean? And like, sometimes there's that crossover reference of known bias attributes that would rise in like, say, a soul or whatever, blah, 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 right? But then going forward, all of this stuff is so new to me, okay? So I've always kind of understood science in a little bit and, space, all that kind of stuff is super interesting, right? We put satellites up there. How else are you going to watch TV, right? And then, and then internet came along and then you're like, who needs satellites? But, obviously that's why we have downed internet all the time, but I do have to throw out that these are just, things that I absorbed just like you, just like everybody. These are not like novelty things, and they all kind of like happened everywhere at the same time, right? So super interesting. Kind of got me thinking, more about this concept of cycles and the kundalini kundabuffa, like the whole, oscillating, wave, whatever you want to call it, and us riding along its, micro event stream thing, and which we would experience in our globe, like little snow land being Earth, right? So super interesting. And, I honestly have not been able to eat, sleep, and stop getting stuff done. Like I am absolutely the embodiment of that pink bunny, dude. Like I don't know what happened. Something beautiful happened, folks. I started just knowing things. Like a lot of things. Like specifically who was thinking about me. And then I went on a little rabbit hole, And for the sake of discussion, I'm just going to tell you right now, I can read this kid's mind. He's already throwing out into public ether that he's hoping that I mention his name. So we're not going to mention his name, okay? However, I will show you the stage. So, I currently live in Nashville, Tennessee, right? And going back to cycles, just to kind of give you some background on me. I was born in Minnesota. I moved 19 different times to go to different schools. I, graduated from high school in, like Appleton. Went to Appleton North. It's fun. And then, did the whole college thing in P Vegas is what they call it, And then they made it a nursing school, so the, slang didn't jive as well. But, we always would go to like Dubuque, Iowa, or Madison, Wisconsin, right? So there's always happenings, right? And there's all these concepts of cycles. And this is where I started getting into the concept of, oh, well, it's this season. We do this, and then it's like this slow little wave thing as we migrate across the calendar year, right? And it's really interesting, super strange. I love it, because it just taught me how to adult, right? Paying bills on time, consistently showing up to school. They're like, yo, this kid actually sits in a chair. Good boy. You can have an A, or whatever. And then like, the whole, praxeology of putting it back into public ether or just in casual discussion with your class, right? Well, anyway, cycles, right? Cycles. Everything's cyclical. I always kind of thought that it was cyclical, okay? Now, the one strange piece of this puzzle that I didn't understand was that why there was feelings. Like, I've always tried to like suppress these like feelings, but I only get feelings when people are thinking about me. This is important because it places them in different locations according to where I'm at, right? And it gets very awkward super quick when I know exactly where you are because you're randomly thinking about me. Weird, right? A lot of times it's like bathroom, something weird, Just like, dude's picturing me. Weird. Strange, bro. But no judgment, The thing that I needed to go and convey here is cyclical illusions. So I probably more so than the average person I'm very trusting. I trust everybody, literally everybody. And even if you stab me in the back, I still have a tendency to give you another shot. You know what I mean? Because I don't really think, just like, and that's why like it's hard to get mad. Like, I don't know what that is. Like, it's hard to do these things now just because of outthinking them, So, okay. This got kind of strange, right? Because, okay, so we got the location thing, according to my mind. I've got these seasonal things that are popping up, It seems like this psychic thing seemed to be more aligned with specific times, even though time doesn't really exist, in proximity they are to whatever that, an illusion of time then, or a calendar year or whatever. It impacts differently, completely. So I'm sure like you, I knew nothing. When people are like, yo, do you know what a spell is? I'd be like, a spelling bee? And they're probably going to come back and you're like, dude, you're an idiot. No, like witchcraft and like, Demon's Brew and all this other weird stuff and like black magic. And I'm like, black magic? Is that like a sex potion? What are we talking about here, folks? Dude, I've never heard of these things. Is that real? Voodoo? What? Like, and then I started looking at this stuff. I'm like, are you kidding me? Okay. So I'm looking at this stuff, right? And then I don't know like anything about this. So I'm like actually researching what these things are, right? Like what is a spell, right? Because I thought because if you just asked me off the rip, like, yo, hey, Will, what's the most philosophical, way that you could use spell to convey meaning, besides physically spelling something out? Well, I would be like, yo, okay, I guess physically explain, like writing things out with intention. So then it's got the embodiment of its definition through the intention of the force of, your graphite against the materium of the paper that you're writing on there. And then that would be a straight up witchcraft spell, because there's like an intention, there's a word, there's a general meaning. Obviously, there's a trigger, but seemingly like like a fake one, right? One we can't see, not as revealing, right? Interesting. Okay. Well, that was not the case, and I really couldn't get straight up definitions besides like shorts and stuff. And I'm not like, I don't mind shorts, but I want to get like a whole concept kind of thing. So I'm researching, right? Looking at all my, fellow comrades, typing in here, teaching me what a spell or voodoo or this black magic mystery is. And, honestly, the ones that explained it probably the best were all tarot readers, okay? Or tarot. And again, my ignorance, I just didn't know enough about these things. So, probably for the last like week and something, become more familiar with what these concepts are and maybe how to, use them in practice, right? And what I ended up finding out, because I was watching like a lot of content, okay? I came across this one lady's content specifically, of which I will give you her name, because what I noticed is that all the tarot channels are currently broadcasting my experience story in the materium of the ontology in the land of Gion, which is unbelievable. So anyway, this lady is called Intuitive Goddess 333. She and this other lady, Goddess Energy, have straight up been channeling my stories to the point where I'm learning different aspects of my life from these amazing people. It's unbelievable. They got huge channels. I didn't even know this was real, folks. Okay? And then, let me see. Yeah. Right when I'm like watching, probably at about 8:30 in the morning, it started coming on. I started getting like super weepy. Dude, I don't cry at all. And, it's just like, it's kind of like, obviously repressed emotions, But then, like, within the last year, I kind of like embodied this whole thing, which and that later confirmed with these things. These people are saying divine feminine, bro, feminine. And then I'm like, yo, that's not gender specific. What? I don't know. So I see all these things, right? And we haven't really traversed this topic in the ontology, but as the doer, they look at it in kind of like circles, right? And I'm kind of all over the place right here. But what I want you to know is that in the hierarchy of an identity of a soul, there are 12 variants of that same soul, 6 versions female and 6 male, combined to create the divine masculine feminine perfect, right? Through and through. Not that we can visualize this just yet, but there's a really great book called Thinking and Destiny that will go and outline this for you. Keep in mind, I think I've read it about 25 times, and I'm still kind of dialing it in. But eventually, with these different teachings from these different aspects of nature, whether that be you, or that be your family, physical nature in the materium, these might show you extra refractions or reflections of different layers of density that you didn't know, to reveal more about yourself and other people, but then your surroundings and these archetypes. Another thing that came up, archetypes. So I'm like, looking at these videos, and like I said, this like intuitive goddess, she just starts going ham. So the first thing she said is about 10 years ago, straight up. And I knew exactly, this is right when I met this kid. 10 years ago, I got put into a cycle, a karmic cycle. So starting in 2014, I worked for a Fortune 500 company out of, Minnesota, okay? And I lived in this town called Austin. We made food, okay? And like it was super interesting place where I learned so much about processing and how everything operates and, just the great, like really wholesome people to work around, okay? And I've always had a good experience with anybody who had even met in that town, right? Great people, really. Because you're talking like little P-Dunk little town of Minnesota, right? And dude, it's just my old stomping ground. I love that place, right? But anyway, I got promoted and they, moved up to the Twin Cities. That's where things started getting a little strange. And I met this person. And I've always noticed an odor around this man. I'm not really one to, and I haven't even mentioned it till just now. So I've known this person since 2014. It is 2025. I haven't mentioned that once until, today at, what is it? 8:33 p.m. Central Time in Tennessee. What I found out that smell is hex spell work from black magic. I didn't realize that there's a physical stench of feces and urine and ammonia that comes from spell work. Did not know this. And they try to mask it with different things and whatnot. But I would later find out from these two perfect light bodies teaching me about what tarot is here. And they're explaining my story and how different aspects of my story were staged and propped up, like in an unbelievable way, to the point where over the last year, he ran a ring of 50 men across multiple states with multiple sex partners, attempting to recruit different potential love interests for me in different areas that I would go. And he would do this to form friends within the materium. He would create conversations of an echo chamber. He would go and create personas on different social media platforms. He would, I didn't even know all these things. He installed an application on my phone for GPS targeting, for real-time tracking and monitoring humans anywhere in the world. And then, it just kind of went on and on. And if you'll notice, I'm not really upset about this because, here's the thing. Here's the juice, okay? Everything that happens to us not only for a reason, the reason is that lesson, okay? And then how we can reflect and move forward to prevent from what we just learned. Otherwise, you're creating a cyclical cycle. And this concept is fundamental to the progression of the human condition and consciousness itself at any scope and scale, any location within the known or unknown universe, okay? Because what's the most important aspect of consciousness is the growth in reflections of refracted moments once lost. Okay? And once we can consider that, we can gain perspective to move forward, right? Instead of being stuck in the past or stuck in the future, and then you're in the middle and nobody even realizes that's the only aspect of you that even exists within the materium. Okay? So, this story runs deep. So, and this might have even started before, I graduated college. This might go all the way back to my birth. But nothing about my life, no people that I've ever physically met in my life outside of like two bros are organic. And all of them have been altered in some way that they aren't aware of. So, what dawned on me yesterday as I was going through like my crown chakra and throat chakra release and the trials of Gion was that I had to stop communications. So I had to delete all my messages and genuinely keep my phone off. I don't know if I can make phone calls anymore. There's an angelic connection between my soul and the party that I contact. And they begin getting high off of me like a drug, like I'm epinephrine or something. And this has been a condition of mine since before I remember. And like I said, every aspect of my life to this moment, I'm 38 years old, has physically been designed by these people. Okay? I need to put this out there because I wasn't genuinely aware that this was real. I know one person at that company that is like my bro, my angel bro. And I had to pass on this message and we'll see where it goes. But I cannot hold on to this truth. This story is unraveling and coming out everywhere. I wasn't aware that these networks were as, advanced or as present as they really are. I'm not trying to promote fear in any capacity because you are infinite. My one thing that I absolutely have to drive home to you is to never, if anything like this plagues you in life, anything, just know that nothing can touch you. You are infinite. And you cannot put these energies into motion. Okay? Because that is the surrender of the power that becomes their horcrux and ability to torment. Okay? I've been getting psychological attacks like crazy. I didn't even know what they were, right? Just like thinking, I'm like, oh, maybe this is like what people talk about, like depression. But I mean, this is like crazy stuff. Like, I mean, for like 10 years, folks, like horrific, like bored on a Saturday night, this guy opens up his journal and tries to torture Will to make sure that he's alone and can't know anything. But even still, I have to appreciate what happened here. Because what he did unlocked me, okay? in order for this person to do any of these things to my soul and my body, my doer body, I drew up a contract because I knew I was infinite. And I knew that any soul deserves the opportunity to grow their light body in the form of consciousness. So I made a deal. I made a deal that if he didn't torture my soul, he could ascend. He could know all. And he wouldn't be forced to torment and get his frustrations out through my vessel. So that was the trade. That's the conscious trade. That's the choice. And that's what you can consider fate. Because even if it's your hero journey to go down a road, you don't have to go down that path if you don't want it. You know, I'm trying to show you there's a different way. Once he went down this road, it's out of my hands. This is an angelic contract. Unfortunately, he will wear the mark of the beast and the ram's horns for eternity on this plane. I do not want this for people. I want people to grow. I want consciousness to expand. I want the hate to end. There's no reason to be mad or have fear. Most of these things that we're playing out are from a higher self with a keener sense of perspective to offer and shed light on meaning of what's happening in this materium environment we call either Gion, Eden, Earth, Seven, and these are all different narratives of the same story. But the truth that I was faced with yesterday is that I am number 13. And I'm going to do my part to share and grow my ability within our conscious network. I want people to learn and facilitate their true self because I see the beauty and greater being within you, even if you don't. And that's my purpose because I am here to be the living, breathing example of the change I need to see in this world. And I'm bringing you with me. So these are my takeaways from what happened yesterday. I am recovering. I am not upset. I am always eternally grateful for these experiences. While no people that I've maybe ever met are organic or real, I still appreciate them. And I learned something. And I could take that with me, even if it was all fake. So I just want you to know that we're in this together and we're going to make a comeback. It's 2025, baby. Film the World Podcast.